Hello, Internet. Welcome to Discover RPG, that really fun chat show where we take your questions about RPGs and D&D, substitute them with our own, and do our damnedest despite all forces in the universe and our own psyches to stay on topic. I am Angela. This is my co-host Logan, and we have a special guest today. A special guest. Why don't you introduce yourself to the lovely people?
I don't know. Why don't I? I'm Chad. On Twitter, I am Chadlicious, and I had to come up with a Twitter handle in high school. Just don't ask her. I'm also the game master of the Chaotic Goodness podcast here on Nerdsmith, and I'm also the storyteller of In Vain Walpurgisnacht, also on Nerdsmith.
I only ever call it In Vain.
I learned how to say it, Logan. I was polite.
I've said it a few times, but I only call it In Vain.
Well, the actual podcast is In Vain. Walpurgisnacht is the current campaign that we're playing.
Yeah,
So,
So In Vain is an appropriate title for it. Perfect.
I saw that colon. I understand. In the title. Colon in the title.
Thank you for specifying.
Sorry.
We were both... didn't know you were minoring in
Yeah, and oh god, I don't remember the joke we made about shenanigans, someone being a proctologist. I don't remember what the joke was.
Wrecked him. Damn near killed him.
Killed him. Ah! Thank you, Resin 360 for the...
Woo! And so, In Vain is a Vampire the Masquerade campaign, correct?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, In Vain is Vampire the Masquerade using the version 5 rules.
Okay.
It takes place in the year 1989 in West Germany in the city of Heidelberg. So the Berlin Wall is still up. It's kind of a political type thing. There's the Odenswald on one side of the city. There's the Schwarzwald on the other. So very dark forest, primal stuff. A lot of cool things with that. And Chaotic Goodness is a comedic, totally improvised space opera podcast where nobody prepares anything, and we just make stuff up on the fly.
Always good. What was the original system you guys used for Chaotic Goodness again?
We use the Uncharted Worlds game system. It's a powered by the Apocalypse system. Around Season 2, we switched gears to use the What's Old is New RPG system, WOIN, by Russ Morrissey.
Now, are you going to continue to change that up per arc, or is that something you kind of found one you're happy with now and you're going to move on?
I actually was toying with the idea of every single season we would do a completely different science fiction RPG system.
I think it's an amazing idea.
Yes, I thought it was a great idea, but Kim threatened to kill me if she had to learn a new RPG system. So I think we're just going to stick with What's Old is New.
Okay. You gotta listen to your players. Communication, super important, especially when it's threats.
Yeah, she sits next to me at the table when we record, and she usually has sharp implements around her. So,
hello, Resin. Hi, Dire Bear.
Logan's gonna handle saying hi to chat. Hi, chat.
Hello, Matthew. Hello, my beautiful wife. Not Matthew. Although Matthew's very beautiful.
It's true. So, just as a let's start. We do I think our playful banter just sort of.
We already had.
I think our playful banter just sort of starts whenever and runs throughout the show. So it's not really a segment.
I thought we were already going. I thought we were already doing that.
I'm on.
We've gotten rid of segments.
We do our, yes, this is how Logan creatively expresses himself now by putting little artworks.
Wait, I can be creative with this?
Oh God, I shouldn't have said anything. No, be boring and conventional. Be completely expected.
Well, we're gonna edit the layout a little bit and change things up a little bit. We thought the idea of having the list, we thought it would be a cool idea at first. We found that this type of format had worked better for us with how little prep we end up doing for this. Speaking of that, today's show is about preparation.
Whether to do so or to not do so. Honestly, there's lots of stuff to talk
and what
about.
the pros and cons.
Yeah.
And what kind of skills you need to have.
Yeah. real quick, Chad, I forgot we usually do this whenever we had a guest on. So what's your history with role-playing games? How did you get started? What was your like gateway drug?
Wow. Okay, so I remember after years and years of thinking about role-playing and stuff, I actually remembered that when I was about I think I was about like 11 years old. I had a cousin that was living in the apartments next to the house I grew up in. Didn't know he was my cousin. We just like met on the street, and then my grandmother was like, "Oh yeah, you two are related." And yeah, weird stuff. Also, like he said, "Hey, let's play this game that I got the books for." And I'm like, "Okay, what kind of game is it?" He's like, "Oh, it's just kind of like you." We did not use character sheets or anything. We just kind of used the books as reference. It was like, oh, you just come up with a character, like a dwarf or an elf or something, and then we go through just kind of what we do. And so we just kind of, we didn't have a dungeon master. We just kind of played. It was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I did not know this until years later, what we were doing after I had started playing again in high school. And I was like, holy shit, this is what we were playing. So technically I've been playing games since I was 11, and let's see. So that's about 28 years.
Wow. You had a blind date with D&D and then rediscovered it later.
With my cousin.
Ooh,
in southern Louisiana.
Ooh, this took a turn.
Very weird turn. A lot of people don't realize, when I talk to people about first time people being introduced into role playing and they want to talk about that weird or sometimes satanic D&D thing, it's funny that they don't really realize how many of their games are technically role play. They don't understand that any improv game is kind of a role play game. Cops and Robbers, or the usually they're older, so Cowboys and Indians, and not a game many people play anymore. But these types of games is basically, the how I used to describe these games was it's basically just Cops and Robbers with rules. The idea is that you just make up stuff as you go, and people don't seem to get it. We've talked a little bit about this, but the way I've kind of worked in my head, I would describe things now is I would literally just sit down, or not even sit down, just talk with them. I have like maybe a 1 to 2 minute elevator pitch of how to play, just by saying, okay, well, you say that you're in a fantasy setting, or you just ask them what type of setting they want to be in, and you just have them make a character by asking them a few questions. And then you say, okay, you literally can do anything you want, or present them a scenario. And after they're done, you just ask them a few questions. They just kind of answered creatively, improv on the spot. And then you say, okay, you just role played. Congratulations. That's it.
I think it was a long time ago. I think it was in a White Wolf supplement when it actually explains like what is role playing. It actually did the whole Cops and Robbers description, but it said instead of you arguing with your friend, like I shot you, no you didn't, yes I did, no you didn't, you roll dice and you say yes I did shoot you.
Yeah. Yep. Cops and Robbers with rules. It's great.
So it's like make believe, but with less maybe more arguing, but arguing about different stuff.
Yeah,
different stuff. Yeah.
Me and my cousin used to play Hocus Pocus when we were younger.
Hocus?
Yeah, you'd just be witches. That was all it was. I was like, this is pretty close to just LARPing.
My wife plays that game.
LARPing?
Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
Or Hocus?
Yeah, just being a witch.
Oh, yeah. There don't have to be a lot of rules to that.
You'd be surprised.
Oh, that wasn't an insult. She's a pagan.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
We've got... We have lots of representation on the network in that way.
When the solstices are rocking.
Today is a mental health day. Aww.
You do that, Resin. That's important.
Big hug, Resin.
Take this mental health day to go crazy. Or not.
Yeah.
Go positively crazy. No, go crazy. Do something. Buy a new book.
So Chad, you started playing surprisingly young. You didn't realize what you were doing early on. When did you start?
This conversation could fit a lot of things.
When did you start DMing?
Like that time in
What did you start actually running?
I remember this. The first game I ever ran, this was in high school, I think my junior year of high school. I was actually, for my junior and senior year, I actually went to boarding school for high school. And whole bunch of boys in the boys' dorm, had not a lot to do on the weekends. We're always for gifted and talented kids, so we're all nerds. And so that's when I got into White Wolf games with Werewolf the Apocalypse. And we were playing that a lot, and then I just one day said, hey, I want to run a game. And so I did, and it was the worst thing I've ever done in my life.
Then you got better.
Yes, it was something like at one point we're trying to cram like 9 werewolves in a minivan, and somebody blew Krynos, and it was not pretty.
9 werewolves in a minivan. That sounds like the start of a joke, but I don't know how it ends. It ends in tears and bloodshed, I assume.
Most werewolf games end in tears and bloodshed, actually.
Okay.
We had I was into Vampire first. That was the first game I was introduced to beyond I started getting games with Magic the Gathering, and then went into Vampire the Masquerade. The reason I started DMing is because our DM was kind of a homophobic dick. And it was kind of a sucky situation. So I started DMing because
sucky.
Because vampires. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, that's why. And Chad's not just 12 or anything. You started playing with your love. You've been playing for about a year, it sounds like. So we got into it, and it was kind of fun because I didn't know anything about D&D. Like I'd heard about it a little bit, but I really didn't know anything about it. And one of the first things I did was I got tired of doing at the time, because it's hard when you're new. I just got tired of doing all theater of the mind stuff, and I wasn't a very strong reader, still not. So I didn't read through all of the rules and stuff. I just kind of got the rules I needed and understood the idea that you're telling a story. And I've been doing theater and storytelling for a long time. So I took all of my little tiny military army men toys and shit, and I drew out a big ass map, and I put minis on it, and I said it's got this scale. I did all of that, never having even seen a role playing game with miniatures before. It was a lot of fun to kind of do that with my friends, early on. And then one was like, it's like playing with D&D with the I think at the time it was chainmail figures, they called them. I'm gonna skip this one because this one's tired. I'm tired of this one. There we go.
Is that
it was a lot of fun to start doing that, but I didn't get into werewolf. It took a long time to really grok werewolf because of the spirit realm. It took forever, but as soon as it clicked, it was my favorite system. I was
the exact opposite. I clicked really well with a werewolf, and I kind of keyed into that. It took a while for me to understand the whole vampire side of things, because in werewolf, it's about fighting. That's what you do. You find something to fight, you get really strong, you kill it. And then vampire it took me a while to wrap my mind around the whole subtlety and politics type thing.
Yeah, it's not everybody's cup of tea all the time.
Yeah. Well, there's also, and I'm going to be very interested to see where, because a lot of things have changed. I'm friends with Mark Reinhagen on Facebook, and we've talked a little bit here about the origins of Vampire the Masquerade and what they were trying to accomplish with it. And he, truly believes that White Wolf's trying to do the same thing again, but with it being in a Americanized hands right now, they made a few mistakes. Things that are not as big of a deal there, that are a much bigger deal here. And he defended them because he's like, look, they're trying to do the same thing, but they're trying to do it their way. Trying to kind of push that edge, push that limit of showing what the world is really like and putting our politics into it. And they made a few mistakes. Absolutely. They corrected them. They hired new people. I think they're moving in the right direction. That being said, Vampire always had a few issues. Werewolf on the PC scale has a lot of issues. And I'm going to be very interested to see where they go to try to fix some of those, because the entire premise of werewolf being kind of shamanistic society, there was a lot of Native American heritage rolled into it, and it was not done incredibly well.
Not very sensitive.
At the time, it was done as respectfully as we thought we needed to be, but now we look back and I go, which is the only reason I haven't run a Werewolf the Apocalypse campaign, is because I'm not sure how to handle that aspect, because it's so ingrained in all of everything they do. So I'm really excited to see how they kind of resolve that. I hope what they do is they go out like they did with Vampire, but they go out to people and be like, here's a bunch of playtest material, we're going to listen, just like D&D did. That's why D&D was so popular. Doing the several rounds of playtesting and actually listening to people created a game that was really, really incredible. Listening to the right people, I should say. There's a lot of OSR people out there that want THACO back or whatever. It's like, okay, no. Just because it was first doesn't mean it's good.
I don't want to need a slide rule to figure out if I hit somebody.
No negative math.
I approve of this.
3rd edition D&D was amazing. That's when I got into D&D heavily. I did a bunch of AD&D. I didn't like it. Took too long to make a character sheet. Too many strange rules, like I get experience as a rogue for stealing gold. So you're rewarding me from stealing for the party. Great. That's not me.
Well, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was made to be a competition, like to play at conventions. So it was whoever at the end of the game, whoever had the most XP won. So that's why the rogue got XP for stealing, the fighter got XP for fighting, the wizard got XP for dying first. Wizarding. I don't know. Dying first. That's pretty much it.
I was playing a dwarf fighter in my first AD&D game that wasn't just in some dude's room. Never mind. So first time I was sitting around a table, played AD&D. It took about 3 hours to make the characters. This is the first time. It's a lot of rules. And especially when they have like 30 books for you to look through. And within 20 minutes, I was dead. And I was like, this is not fun. No, I made another character and we got into it and I started to actually have fun with it. But the people that I was surrounded with were just not really great people. Like we had this DM particularly had a rule that says you're not allowed to change characters because he had too many people constantly changing characters. Well, I'm a big role player. I get into my character's backstory, and this was a half elf that had never been in a half wood elf that had never been in a wood elf society, who were raised by humans. So when they first got around wood elves, the way that the society was described, my character really connected with it. So when everyone was ready to leave, I was like, my character's not going. They're happy here. There's no way. And then one of the other players just completely tore me a new one, going, well, you can't change your character and this, so you're dropping the campaign and this and that. The DM's like, it's a role-playing decision. It's very different. So the DM at least handled it really well, but the people in the group were just like, you don't understand. See, this guy was the problem. He was the one that wanted to change all the characters all the time and like every other week play a new character. It's like, no, you can't just change because you want to. That becomes a problem. But role-play decisions, at least the DM respected. So it was nice to finally get into that more role-play aspect of that game. But then I think I went through 3 characters in 5 sessions. So it was very brutal. So AD&D wasn't for me necessarily, especially being an hour to drive to sit there and make a character for 3 hours and then do nothing that day, or die in 20 minutes. But yeah, so it was kind of a pain. But 3.0, that's when I really got heavily into it. I loved D&D at that point. It was also extremely broken because things that stacked should not have ever stacked. They fixed that in 3.5.
So I don't know how this question will fit into the other things we want to talk about today. So I'm just going to ask it at the top of the hour. Chad, so you run running a sci-fi game. I've never run a sci-fi game before. From the perspective of like yes-anding stuff, when you're dealing with fantasy, you could just be like, well, the tech's not there. You can't do that. But like whether it's like cell phones or teleportation or anything like that, just depending on the rules of your sci-fi world, how do you keep them from inventing wonderflonium and it just solves a problem that they're dealing with?
Okay, so this is actually something I'm very interested in because I don't run sci-fi for this very reason. It's the reason why when I run White Wolf, I don't like having cell phones in the game. I like, we're in the 80s, so there's no cell phones. Because you run into this a lot. Cell phones solve so many problems. I mean, you look at movies that make fun of the idea that if they just had why don't they have a cell phone? Oh, no cell service, the easy way out. Okay. It's there's just so many problems with it. I had this problem incredibly when I used to run GURPS. I ran GURPS sci-fi, really tried hard to do an actual sci-fi. Every possible conceivable problem I could come up with at like tech level 8 is taken, or 9 is taken care of. It's ridiculous. So how do you handle that?
Well, this is I'll talk about the sci-fi game in a second, but when we talk about the no cell phones in the game, I was doing some research this week for In Vain, and I just realized it's 1989. Cell phones are becoming a big thing, and the internet was born. So this is going to be fun for me.
But accessibility is the issue, and at that point, weren't the cell phones like bags you carried around?
You have to add it to your encumbrance.
No,
in
1989, Motorola came out.
Nice.
I don't know. I had a teacher in middle school that still had one of those bag phones, so I don't know if they just got stuck with it for a while. They were probably still paying it off.
Hold on.
I mean, yeah. Well, think about like late adopters and stuff.
Chad knows we're live, right?
There's people
just checking.
Yeah, we're gonna fill time while he does something.
All right.
But yeah, this idea that like people are late adopters to things. I actually have I don't remember where I found it, but there are ways to incorporate modern technology in games. It's just when you do research questions, it's whether or not you understand how to search for something. Like what sort of terms, like basically your investigation roles in D&D, for lack of a better example, you're dealing with your ability to reason how to find it. Or you could build in the idea that somebody removed that information. Like, that information's classified. You can't access it, but even though it's there. So you could come up with reasons of compensating for someone having tech. Just going, like I said, classified information, or somebody has removed it or wiped it from the database, or you just don't know how to Google something. As someone with a degree in how to Google something, there are people that don't know how to find it.
Sorry.
People that don't know how to Google is me. It's insane.
Sorry about that. I got a call from my son's daycare. He's okay.
Sure, yeah, of course.
Live television. So for the last question I was asked, like, how do I prevent my players from saying, oh, there's this problem, or we'll just invent this machine that takes care of it. So even in today's world, technology might be available in the game universe that we're playing in, but we may not have the right tools to make it. It may require an unreasonable amount of energy. It may be extraordinarily dangerous. We don't have the resources or the funds to do it. Or it could be completely deadly because, the game mostly takes place on the small spaceship cruiser, and it's not the most high-tech or fanciest of ships.
Sure. Yeah, leaning into a lower tech sci-fi can help. Less of a utopian situation where you have
definitely not utopian at all. Yeah.
Teleporters and replicators aren't necessarily a thing in every sci-fi.
Right. So what I learned from doing GURPS and from really studying it for a long time, and if I was going to go into it again, which I probably will at some point, I also kind of learned that you start to tell different stories. If you start to look at like Star Trek or something, the stories told by Star Trek are very different than the stories told by Firefly, or the ones that are kind of more low to mid tech. So there's that idea that you absolutely have these different types of stories you can tell. You just don't tell the stories that need that kind of issues. It works for me.
My favorite trick is you can always say, you do this, you accomplish it, you build the machine that solves the problem. However, there's an unintended consequence that really screws over the entire party. What is it?
I love unintended consequences.
Yeah, you do.
Just because you save the day doesn't necessarily mean you save yourself.
Fair. Or something later just comes up as a obstacle that you have to deal with because you eased the solution in one direction, something else got overly complicated. Yeah.
I always prescribe to the Joss Whedon school of storytelling, which is don't let your players be too happy for too long.
Also, I would think, since we're sort of talking about that, in situations where there's not really a good answer, do you have any strategies for either communicating that to your players and trying to help them prevent decision paralysis? Because that's going to happen all the time. People are like, oh God, how do we fix this? Sometimes there's humor to be found in the decision paralysis. Sometimes it just brings the game to a halt. So do you have any thoughts about how to grease the wheels a little bit? and like make them less afraid to make a decision.
We literally ask every single person this because we don't have a good answer yet.
Yep.
I have several answers to this. One is, no, screw them. They need to come up with something. Second, sometimes depends on my mood. Sometimes like having a helpful NPC make a suggestion, or another option would be, make them give me an intelligence check. If you want to do this, this has to happen first. That sort of thing.
I personally like the intelligence check way of doing things occasionally, because it's like, come on, DM, give me a clue. and you get the opportunity.
A lot of times, your character is a lot smarter than you.
Yes,
Absolutely.
That is a big challenge when you're dealing with certain characteristics, especially mental stats, that you just need to meta role playing that sort of situation. Absolutely. Can be very important to making sure you don't discourage your players from playing that type of character in the future.
Yeah. The reason why I hate riddles so much.
So what I did at the beginning of my campaign was in session 0, I found out who my puzzle people were. And I occasionally put them into a game together because we play West Marches. And then I do puzzles on the days that they're all in the game. Occasionally catches 1 or 2 non-puzzle people. That's just part of it. But that's what I do, is I wait until I have all my puzzle people in. They want to do riddles. They want to do puzzles. Just like my politics. I wait till I have my politic people together before I do a seriously heavy politic game. So that's worked out really well for me. What were we talking about right before that, though?
Decision paralysis?
But sometimes the problem becomes that the decision that the players are trying to make is completely subjective to them, to what they want to do. There is no extra information you can give them. There's no insight that you can give them. And it's just some players thinking that something's a good idea and some players thinking something's a bad idea. And you just get kind of stuck in this rut where you're like, I have no way to help them. I have no way to force them. And a lot of DMs that I've talked to have said things like, well, put some, some sort of motivation, give them a time limit. But I'm like, they're sitting at a bar hanging out for lunch. It's like, it doesn't make sense that every time they have a problem at a bar, somebody comes in and starts shooting,
Sure. Yeah. You haven't played one of my games. But I'm not sure if this answers your question, Ange, but about decision paralysis. I think my answer for this might be a little bit different because the only games I run are my podcast now. But in Chaotic Goodness, we have a player. She is on the spectrum. And when it's her turn to come up with something, she's a slow processor. She takes a long time. She even told us before the game started, when we said, hey, it's improv, she was really worried that, she'd be put on the spot and then not be able to think. Mm-hmm. I have had to edit like 4 or 5 minutes out of episodes while she stopped and thought about something, and we're all okay with that. So podcast wise,
that's a really good way to set expectations and make sure that everybody's comfortable, and you're luckily in a medium where that is something you can compensate for, and it's totally fine.
And just telling my players that, no decision is a bad decision. Some are more deadlier than others, but if it's funny, it might work.
Yeah.
It's not so much the rule of cool as the rule of fool, in my opinion. If it's funny and you look like a jackass, I might let it work.
Resin from the Crit Show podcast, Resin, not Resin. Sorry. Rev from the Crit Show podcast. He runs a very successful podcast. It's a great show. Him and I were talking the other day. He says when he's talking about what he keeps in his episodes, if it isn't humor, what is it?
Humor, heart, or
action. He cuts it. So if it's not those 3 things, he completely cuts it. But he says humor is one of those things that really grabs onto people, and can make your show something very, very unique and special. So it's just so I love that. But that is more an out of character processing. That's a little different than characters in character not being able to make that
but your players very much inform the character's ability sometimes.
I understand that, but I also understand that when I'm playing a character, that character's decisions are not necessarily what I want to do.
You try to stay in character.
Yeah.
You're like, damn it, I don't want to beat anybody up, but my character really does. How do
It's
you
what my
avoid
character would do.
How do you avoid the
well, that's
my
a whole
guy?
different thing.
Yeah, how do you avoid the my? Oh, fine, then my character is lawful and cannot allow us to do this morally gray thing. It is just
That is my guy
causes,
syndrome.
but it causes a morality conundrum that they all start talking to each other, trying to justify what the right thing is. I don't know.
At that point, I'm hoping that I would remember that I want to probably just step in and say, so split the party. You know, some of you go and do it, some of you don't. The paladin can't do it themselves, but they don't necessarily not understand the need to do the thing, or that the greater good overall will be a good thing. Paladins, it depends on the type of paladin too, but that is where you start running into my guy syndrome. And my guy syndrome, when you start to affect other people's agency, is when it's considered my guy syndrome, in my opinion.
Well, this is why I only play in all of my games. My characters have to be broken, horrible people.
There you go. That works. All right. So why don't we talk a little bit about prep? So in preparation of games, we have several different types of philosophies. We have the I improv everything guy. And then we have the every single detail has to be on the paper or I can't start the game guy. Those are the two extremes, I think. There's probably other extremes within that kind of grid, but those are the two that I always think of. It's, I've only ever been the I'm going to improv everything guy and maybe some minor prep. There have been some games where I've tried really hard to do big prep. Usually they're modules where I have to read over a lot of stuff several times because, again, I'm not a great reader. So, and try to understand. That's why I don't run a lot of modules, because I'll be off the rails by the second act or by the second scene. So, but yeah, so what type of prepper are you, Chad?
You said you have two different types on your shows.
Right. Throughout the entire time I've game mastered, I have gone from one extreme to the other. I think everybody kind of starts out as the super focused, organized prep. I want this to happen, and then they're going to go to this place, and then the players are going to decide to do this thing, and I'm ready for this, and then the players do something completely different. It's like, well, damn it. And then you get really mad at your players, and you get into an argument, and then the game breaks up, and all that. With the podcast that I do, so Chaotic Goodness is all improv. I don't really prepare anything, really. I'm not even certain I use character sheets anymore. I don't know. It's completely
there we go.
Which
I have no idea what the audience just heard or saw because everything froze. So I have no idea where we're at. And it sounds, guys, let us know where we're at. Can you guys hear us? Did you hear all of that? Because everything just froze on my end.
What was the last thing y'all?
And I don't know. It sounds like we lost someone in here. Well, everyone's still here. Okay, good. Can you hear us now? If they could hear me now. There was a big freeze. Okay, so yeah, so we'll start over, Chad.
So you said you've gone on different directions on the spectrum of prep versus just complete improv.
Right. Yeah, and so for Chaotic Goodness, complete total improv. I don't plan anything, which in a way, when it's time to record, is less stress for me, and also gives me an excuse to get more input from the players, because I don't have to come up with everything on the fly. My favorite thing to do is they encounter an NPC and I ask them, what's the character's name? Because I'm horrible at coming up with names. The other side of things, In Vain is not extremely, I don't have a whole lot of preparation. It's not extremely prepared, but there's a lot more preparation. I knew that when we started doing a vampire game, the main thing that I needed to do, there's two reasons for the podcast. So one, I had to come up with all of the NPCs. I needed all the vampires that they would meet, who they are, their powers, what they were capable of, because it's a living, breathing world that they're in. And I can't really improv that too well, especially like the political ties and stuff and who likes who and all that. The other thing, the reason why I wanted to set in vain in Germany is because my family, we're planning on actually moving to Germany at one point.
Right.
And I wanted to know more about German history and the German language, and doing a role-playing game and a podcast that's set there gave me a big excuse and motivation to learn about the country,
That's
the
awesome.
customs, and the language. And
That's a really cool way to approach that too, is I want to learn about something, so I'm going to force myself to have to learn about it because people are expecting me to know stuff.
Yes, I know myself enough to know that if I don't make it related to role-playing, I am not going to do it.
Hey, figure out your motivational triggers, and it's like, all right, this is how I know I will accomplish something. No, that's awesome.
Thank you,
Right.
Tales from the Fandom, for the 50 bits. You are amazing.
Heck yeah.
Talesfromthefandom.com. Awesome sites, awesome show. Go take a look.
So, which side of the spectrum do we want to start in terms of just an overall discussion of the skills you need to be that kind of DM?
I can start on either side.
start with no
I
prep?
would say we can start with what I think a lot of people think DMing is. What most people who don't DM think DMing is the all prep.
Sure.
Is the I have to have my entire world written, because the DMs a lot of people look up to initially are the ones that do a lot of that type of work. I think that's what I did. I saw those DMs. I went, wow, that's amazing what you're doing. You wrote your entire, like the DMs that have like player books that are this big about their world. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's the DM I think that most people think that is a good DM when you first start playing D&D. So let's start on that end.
Okay. So I started prepping a one-shot, the first one-shot I ever ran, and made the mistake of saying, hey, I'm going to run a mystery game as my first one-shot. And I had all of these characters prepped and their interconnected relationships, the things that the characters could discover when they talked to all these people, and it was a very overly complicated web of intrigue that was going on in this story that I was doing. I have a shit ton of stuff, and I'm really proud of the stuff I came up with, but they didn't know to look for any of it. So they would go around and it's like, okay, I have all this stuff. I have a whole thing with these miners working in the mines, and they're in the tavern. You can learn all about the politics of the mine. And then one of the guys just ended up becoming a male prostitute instead, because they were talking to some of the escorts that were at the tavern. And I went, oh, this guy hangs out with them. Come with me. You are no longer a worker in the mines. You are now this character. And from there, I just had to start improvising because they wouldn't know to look for anything that I had given them. And they, 5 people who think differently from each other and from you are going to do way different stuff. So having that concrete plan, that concrete game plan, whether that's plot or setting, can really blow up in your face if you don't allow it to be malleable.
I think that's kind of rule number 1 when it comes to over prep, which is what I think that it is. It really is over prep when you are prepping every scene, everything. Make sure your players understand that you have a story to tell. In session 0, I would recommend you say, look, this is a particular story. You're the characters in the story, but there's a story to tell. It's not it's not an open sandbox, and see if they're interested in that type of game, because it's a very different type of game than something where the players feel like they have a lot of agency. If you are the mid to over prepper, which I think is as far as you should go if you're doing a lot of prep, is that you'll have a lot of things prepared, but you won't necessarily have like a linear progression of it. You'll understand that there's not an actual plot. More, you're just doing scene setting. You'll have the scenes ready, you'll have the NPCs ready, you'll have, that type of thing. That is where I think is a good place for the person that needs to have that information to feel comfortable to DM. Is you can have all of that ready. Don't worry too much about the plot itself. Just have a world that kind of exists and works, and exists without the players, and let them know that too, because some players, especially new players, don't always get is this idea that the world turns without them. If you hear about 2 different things happening, you decide to go look at one, that other thing still happens, and then there's consequences from that happening, and then that might change other parts of the story. And that is something that I like to do, and I think a lot of DMs like to do, is this idea that those consequences can happen when the players don't intervene on something.
And that doesn't mean you failed. That doesn't mean you lost the game, which is a big one. There's a lot of that mentality of, if everything doesn't go exactly right, I have failed as a player. And so there's a lot of stress that they can put on themselves because they have to make the right decision. And so setting that expectation with them that it's like, no, it's okay. Things just move on. And honestly, embrace the failure, because the failure can bring you to really cool, dramatic places if that's where you want to go as a game.
Right. Rule number 1 is, are you having fun?
Rule number 1 is figure out how people want to have their fun. Then try to enact that as best you can.
Yeah, and that's definitely a session 0 thing. I know we mentioned this a lot, and that's something else that I wholeheartedly think that is important, especially if you're starting with people that you haven't played with before, to understand who you're playing with, what's going on, what type of story they want to tell, and just say something more about the level of prep and prepping, like scene setting. Like if you're a dungeon master or a game master and you're planning that this thing is going to happen, and there's really logically only going to be 3 choices that the party can make. Plan out what would happen with those 3, like if they're going to go left or right, what is there. If they go right instead of left, but you were hoping that they would go left, you just take that left-handed path and recycle it and use it somewhere else, because it's already been prepped. It's not garbage.
Yeah, your players. A good player is not going to rag on you for doing that. They're not going to even know you did it most of the time.
That's the thing. As a DM,
there's a veil.
One of my
there's
big
a belief
rules,
veil.
They're not going to understand what you're doing. They're not going to know that you didn't have that prepped around that corner. They had it prepped around a different corner. That's actually when we start writing modules, which we're going to be started working on hopefully this year. One of the systems that I want to put in place is exactly that type of system. Look kind of built in. This idea that
it's a modular sort of.
It's kind of modular. So it's like, okay, instead of saying, okay, here is, and this is always my one, here is this nomadic fortune-telling woman who comes to town and has this information for the PC, and they have to connect with this PC, the PCs, to do this. You don't need to have necessarily this cryptic fortune-telling woman to be that person. You just have the information, and you know the type of people that you want to give this information. They've got to be mysterious. They've got to be able to disappear on a moment's notice. So they're not going to be a political figure. They're not going to be somebody who owns a shop or runs a shop. They're going to be maybe a hobo, maybe
Logan,
the person.
It can be a political figure. It can be the mayor of the Magicians Guild.
There you go. And they just vanish.
Yes, I said mayor. He wanted to sound more grandiose, and so he called himself mayor. Mayor of the Magic Castle.
So
really well. I'm happy with this.
Go for it. So that's the idea, is that you just need to understand the information that needs to get across and the type of NPC. And at some point, your players are going to run into a situation where you can insert an NPC that will fit that mold. It doesn't necessarily have to be the cryptic woman. Then all of a sudden, or the cryptic nomadic fortune-telling woman. Then all of a sudden you have an NPC. You're like, okay, now that NPC may be important later on. So now you've got to take that NPC and plug them in somewhere else. So then you might have to kind of fit them in somewhere. But at least now the players have seen them in a very organic way. And them coming back, even in a strange place, isn't going to be as weird because they're weird and mysterious.
Yeah. The idea of thinking differently about the information that you're collecting and prepping. Like if you were thinking, all right, I want to give them some sort of intrigue, but you don't necessarily know what they're going to do and where they're going to encounter that intrigue, come up with a bunch of different plot threads. Have them prepared. Just say, these 2 houses are feuding. Okay. These 2 people ran off and got married when their parents didn't want them to. You move that over. You have a bunch of different things that they could latch onto. They might start blurring together. You could combine a bunch. But if you have vaguer concepts that you can then drill down and make them into specific plot points. You'll have that prepped, and that's the prep. It's I need my graph of ideas that I can then draw from, but not necessarily having a very concrete story, unless, like you said, you talk to your players and say, I have a particular story I want to tell. If I throw you a breadcrumb, latch onto it, and we'll go through this particular style of gameplay.
Right. One thing that I have done in a game in the past is create a list of rumors. If the players let's go to the inn and ask if what's going on, and then you go pick one. It's like, oh, this looks like an interesting plot line, and just give them a rumor. And the cool thing about making a list of rumors is just because it's a rumor doesn't mean it's true.
And very often you might run into the players musing about that rumor and giving you a cool idea for what's actually going on. You're like, oh, you guys are so smart. Yeah.
I don't know how many times that the players, like I had something planned that was relatively benign and just kind of like, because I like to insert fun little quirky things in my games sometimes. And so the players were getting like all paranoid about it. I was like, oh my God, what if this person's really like this and they'll do this, that, and the other? I'm like, wow, that's an interesting theory. I'm like that is way better than I had thought of. Wow.
Yeah, you gotta, yeah. I very much appreciate when players are so bought into it that they will start conjuring such worse things than you thought of.
Oh yeah. Or you run into the Sam Smorkle situation. If you're familiar with that meme, there was a little post that went out about, the DMs. I think I pulled it up here. I had the DM at a bar. You see a cloak hunched over man. He wears a crown of bone and blade, surrounded by three sentient rings of fire. His arms are made of steel. Oh, and the player's like, okay, who else is in the tavern? And the DM's like, there's a goblin named Sam Smorkle. And the player's like, ooh, I want to talk to Sam Smorkle. That's what they're gonna do. So then all of a sudden, okay, now Sam Smorkle is the lost king from another place, and it's that is a little bit more railroady than I like my games to be, but it can help out. But what I would probably do is turn Sam Smorkle into this guy's Man Friday, and it just helps out.
See,
and that'd be a good way to kind of guide it.
I would have done a switcheroo and have Sam Smorkle be the big bad, and the guy with the bone crown is his lieutenant.
There you go.
It's like, you think he's bad? Wait till you meet Sam Smorkle.
Sam Smorkle.
All right, so we're talking about we talked about over prepping, the idea of don't assume your players are going to follow along with every little thing that you have prepped. Don't have concrete unless you know they're going to buy into that concrete story. Even when they do, they're going to make changes, and you got to be able to adjust things, whether that's NPC importance, locations with like rooms, or even just macro stuff. You might have to change the country they're going to, and it's like, all right, well, the jungle countries, like the jungle location's over here now because you're going right. Don't worry about it. And we talked about the idea of setting breadcrumbs for yourself as a DM, not necessarily having a novel written, but having a random table you could use, or something that will give you little things to start drawing from.
Absolutely.
What? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, so as a side to all of this, because I'm probably going to reference it in a little bit, there was an excellent video put out by Matt Colville who talks about Sandbox versus Railroad, which to me, Sandbox versus Railroad in my world is very much a very low prep to very high prep type game. And he uses the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit as examples of a sandbox and a railroad campaign. And it works extremely well the way he describes it. And it shows a lot of the pitfalls of a railroady campaign or an overly prepped campaign, where you get stuck thinking that the ideas that you've created are the best ideas. And I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls when you're over prepping, is that you start to go, this is the story, this is my story. And you lose the ability some people lose the ability to be flexible, because the story, as I always say, the story that the players are telling is so much better than the story I'm telling. It is just so much better.
It took me a very long time to get out of that mindset, because when you start as a teenager you have to find your own way of doing things. But if all you're going to do is railroad your players and kind of force them to make the decisions you want to make, you might as well just be writing a novel. That's pretty much what it is. But the other thing I was going to say, and a helicopter just flew by and I lost my train of thought.
Darbear, you're going to hate me. I don't take any notes. My players sometimes take notes.
Yeah, notes.
I take notes.
I make my players take notes, so later on I can go, so what happened at that bar? Okay, what was the name of that bar?
Test time. Test time. Let's see if you guys are paying
attention. Can you link me your notes before we start this game?
Uh-huh.
I love having
that happens a lot.
Note taker. Every detail ever is in there.
Yeah, and I explain that to my players beforehand. It's like, look, I'm not going to remember half of the stuff that we come up with. Somebody needs to write them down.
And I still don't.
But
I still forget some things. It's just...
Yeah, I was going to say, be upfront. That's an element of collaborative storytelling. Especially if you're improving, having a shared document is very, very helpful. So you're not hiding things from them.
This is one of the biggest pitfalls of no prep. Is that if you are not somebody who takes very good notes, which I am not, I am horrible at note taking, because my brain doesn't work like that. I sit there and I want to write notes. I sit there and I want to write. I want to do prep. I want to do more prep than I do. The problem is I sit down to do it and my brain blanks. So I have to learn that I have to take like video or voice notes while I'm driving or something at a stop sign. I turn on the voice thing and I just record myself talking for 20 minutes and then I'll have to listen to it when I get home and try to take notes off of that. That's what I have to do to get real good prep done. But for the most part, that's one of the biggest pitfalls is that you run into a lot more plot holes that you have to then throw magic into to fix or technology. And, you run into forgetting important things. Like, I went back and I listened to some of the first episodes of like Countless Heroes, and there's a few things in there that I'm like going, oh, I thought that was going to be really big. And we just kind of forgot about it. And we just never touched on it. And it's like, well, do I bring it back or I let it go? And for the most part, you just let them go because the players have forgotten about it. There's, the players will let you know what they want to look at, what they want to do. A lot of my very first sessions is just coming up with a bunch of goofy, silly stuff. Like one of my early sessions in a campaign was I created a magical candy festival, and I just let things happen. I knew something bad was going to happen. I didn't know what, but at one point, a piece of one of the experiments went crazy and turned into a gigantic candy monster. I knew it was going to be something like that, but I didn't know which candy. I didn't know where. And I really didn't have anything prepped for that session other than I thought it would be cool to have a candy festival. And of course I stole a lot from Harry Potter. A lot of the ideas there, what I thought more ideas might be that you could exist in that. But that's it. That's all I had for that entire session. And things that happened in that session became the entire campaign.
Right. So two things. Number one, I think, Matthew from Homebrew is here, right?
And Matthew, podcast.
Yes, so I would really love to see Matthew homebrew a black licorice golem now, because they're going to be terrible and horrible things that are nasty. Yes, and the other thing I just remembered when we're talking about role-playing and the game masters that get into the mindset that this is my story, this is my game, I'm telling it the way I want to tell it. If you get away from that, I mean, if really what the goal is for everybody at the table to have fun, you are not telling a story. Everyone at the table is telling the story.
Yeah.
We're collaborating together to create one story, and that's something that is very important to be mindful of. Like if you're one of those high prep dungeon masters and you're getting stuck, that's an important thing to remember.
And I would love to be able to be the type of person that could change the narrative on something or change the mindset. The idea, a lot of people say that being at a gaming table, everyone is supposed to be having fun. I actually a little bit disagree with that. Everybody should want to come back. But there are games when I have my players in tears. They're not having fun, but they are as Scraticus would say, we're evoking emotion. We're enjoying it. But fun is a very like you think fun. You think it's
yeah, but I don't take fun
happiness.
Like that. I take fun. I take having fun in this case as what is the what is the outcome you want to experience through playing this? And that could be something that's just cathartic, or it could be something that is very high drama, but that is what your fun is. That is the thing I am seeking through this game. So that's how I've always done this, right? Why do they watch horror movies?
Horror movies, yes. Because it's that catharsis. It's even like, I'm not having fun in this particular session because my character is lost everything and I'm crying and I feel terrible. It's character growth. And at the goal, hopefully the goal is, as the game goes on, there's going to be like a big change or something better comes out of it.
Absolutely.
And that's part of telling the story. And I kind of disagree with you there, Logan. I think even if somebody is crying or gets really angry in character, that can still be fun. It's still fun to play a role that you don't get to play in life.
For me, fun has always meant like lighthearted and amusement and things. That's why I don't like the word fun, because people never go to a movie that makes them cry and goes, "That was a fun movie." They don't.
But they say that was really powerful, and that was exactly what I wanted to experience.
And I want to go see it again. That is what I'm looking for in a game. So just saying that in every game the goal is just to have fun, that's the only concern that I have with that, is because people want to sit down and go, "Wow, I'm sitting here crying. Why am I crying? It's supposed to be fun." I'm like,
maybe enjoyment is a better word.
Session 0.
Yeah, are you getting what you're looking for out of this game? Are you having the experience you want?
For me, like in high school, most of role playing was therapy. It was a lot of power fantasy, and it was having control over something in my life. That's part of probably why I started DMing, is because you have control in that way. And it helped me through a lot of stuff, and it still does to this day. And I have people coming to me going, their games have helped me through some of the things in their life. And it's funny because had I known that they were going through these things beforehand, I probably never would have touched on certain aspects. But because I didn't know, because they didn't want to share it, of course, that's fine. And it wasn't one of their lines or veils. All of a sudden, they discover that this thing is really powerful to them, and then afterwards they're like, "Wow, that really helped me a lot." And it's like, "Wow, that's amazing. That's a very cool thing that role playing can do."
Yeah, I just remember. Yeah, and I guess there's different types of enjoyment people can get. When I was doing session 0 for In Vain, what I told the players was, okay, so this is, I know some of you have played Vampire. For those of you that didn't, this game is all about personal horror. You suddenly wake up and you are a monster and you are cursed by God or whatever. The jury's out on that. But as a cursed being, everything that you do is ultimately doomed to failure. Everything that you build will turn to ash. Every relationship that you make will end in betrayal or tears or death. And that's just the kind of game that I'm going to run. And they were like, yes, that sounds really awesome.
Make me hurt is a reaction.
Yeah.
Are masochists.
I play Vampire very differently. I play Dark Adventure when I play Vampire. It's more about being like a dark superpower. But there's also that horror aspect. The idea is that, you're going to, at the wrong time, not always, but at the wrong time, you're going to fail that frenzy check. I don't know if they call it frenzy check anymore, but you're going to fail that frenzy check, and you're going to wake up in the donut shop and it's going to be covered in blood. And you're going to have to deal with that, and you have to live with that. Or like one of my characters who got so fed up with the vampire life, ended up telling a very good friend of theirs that what they were, and a reporter of all things, and then ended up being kind of commanded to end them. Like, that's it. No, you don't get a choice. You can't turn them. You can't bond them, if you understand what those terms mean. You have to kill them. You made a mistake. You screwed up. Those moments are horrible, but they're memorable. They stick with me, and it's a story that I will always want to have in my mind.
Yeah, you can play any type of story that you want with any kind of game system. It's just, it's not necessarily bad. Different is not bad. I think that's a rule for any kind of role playing. Just as long as it's enjoyable and everyone agrees to it and it's consensual, do what you want.
Yeah. So I had a question for you guys then. I was talking to a player. I will anonymously share this. I was talking to a player who was intending to run a character that had a tremendous wound done to them physically during their backstory. And so they're basically saying my character is, for example, missing a hand or missing an arm. And they wanted to portray that in a respectful manner, but they wanted it to be a challenge for the character because it's recent injury, and they want to be dealing with the idea of this person has trouble asking for help. This person is still dealing with remembering they can't do everything they used to be able to do. And my best advice to them, in the sense of interacting with the group, was to be incredibly upfront from the get-go that is the kind of character arc you're intending for your character. I want to explore the fact that this person is struggling with this, and I want everybody to be aware that that's what's happening. If they lash out, or if they, get grumpy with you, I know what's happening, and I want to explore a character that is trying to recover from that. So if you want to be a part of that story and try to encourage them to be positive, or try to befriend them despite how grumpy or like how internal they might be, I welcome that. I would love an opportunity to have that character grow a little bit. So that's how I told them to talk to the group, instead of like, nobody knows that my character has this deep-seated dark backstory and I'm going to lash out at people. Let people know that's what you're doing and what you want the outcome to be. The outcome might be different than you plan, but if everybody understands that what you're trying to do is redemptive for the character, people might be more willing to, play in that space with you.
Now, there's one more step to that. You actually have to show growth.
Yes, and you do have to make the effort.
In role-playing games, growth is, and everything is at a breakneck speed. Everything is exponentially faster. Relationships happen faster. People, kings and queens grow and fall faster. Everything happens faster. You think, oh, well, we've gained 12 levels and it's only been 3 months in game. Everything happens faster. So take the time to explore it, but also make sure the growth is seen. Make sure that nobody gets tired of having to deal with that, because some people do want to deal with it, but only for so long. And it can get to the point when if they don't feel like there's any progress being made, that they're not going to want to play that game anymore.
Yeah, one tool that I am considering implementing is and we Logan, I think you and I have talked about this, the almost like the real world talking head concept. Like during game, having those moments of discussion out of the plot line, but in character still, of stepping back going, okay, so Billy, how does your paladin feel right now? Like what's going through their head right now? And if you're able to do that mixed with the character that is incredibly challenging to roleplay and for the other people to interact with, maybe you can see that growth, that internal growth that might be happening, that their behavior might not be changing, but their attitudes are slowly changing. Maybe it takes 3 sessions to get to an actionable change or a visible change, but something's going on in their head. You can try to help the party see that so that becomes less frustrating. You understand, oh, well, you made an impact when you talked to them and told them something, you shared something personal. You made an impact with that grumpy character. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that. That's not too disruptive, but sometimes it might be as easy as just saying, okay, so you step back. All right, Billy, how you feeling? Like, what did that do? How did you feel about that interaction? What is your character thinking right now? Because that is sort of the beauty of the role play space. You can act a bit like a omniscient narrator. We do that all the time when we're talking about the way our characters act. We might say, well, they go do X, Y, and Z, but half the time you're saying, well, they're a little nervous about what's about to happen here, so they're going to go do X, Y, Z. You're giving that internal monologue anyway. So it's just weaponizing that to make it easier to handle complicated characters that might do shitty things.
I think you just answered your own question.
Yay! Sometimes it just needs to talk it out.
I also would like to another thing that I would really love to remove the this concept of that some players, especially newer players or inexperienced players, have is the idea of secrets. Secrets break games.
Secrets keep you sick.
There you go. Secrets are this idea. Now, I mean, there's sometimes in character where it makes sense for other characters to not understand something or know something. but the players don't necessarily need to know that. And a lot of it comes from dealing with newer players who don't understand that if they know it out of character, it doesn't mean they know it in character. So a lot of people started to keep secrets, but even starting the game with some deep-seated secret that you want to reveal in game because it's going to be so dramatic. First off, it's never going to be as good as you think. Ever. It never ends up being as good of a reveal as you think. Not even as a DM do your secrets sometimes come across that good, but we happen to be able to do a lot of them, and some of them land really well. But as a player, it just never really works out incredibly well. There are some things that you just don't necessarily need to have them. That's all. They can really put a drive between you and other players in a lot of different ways. So just talk about what it is, especially if they have some sort of serious thing, especially if they have some sort of prejudice, please God, don't keep that a secret. I have a rule. If you come into my game and you have a prejudice, like I hate half orcs, you have 2 weeks, maybe 3 to 5 sessions total. If we're not playing really often, to fix that, at least with the other PCs.
We love you, nameless player. I love you, nameless
this
player.
has happened so many times. Oh, I forgot that was the actual example.
That was the actual example.
Well, for that game, but I literally just grabbed any random race. Orcs get a bad rap.
Right. Unless you're playing Shadowrun, and then the racism's already baked into the game.
Well, and that's a whole other issue in my opinion. But I'm personally, I think a lot of the racism and things needs to be removed from these games. It's cheap, it's easy, it's not nobody. I don't care anymore. I get tired of it. Let me have a bad guy that is like that. Like I am going to literally wipe out all whisper gnomes, or whatever, and they'll have a reason for it and stuff. But just being in a situation, and especially these modules and things where in my world, every race is everywhere. They're all over the fucking place. I have more of any other race than I have humans most of the time in my games. But these modules, like, there's 1% of other than human here in this city. It's like, okay, I guess, it just gets tiring after a while. If you want to play that type of game, sure, but understand that a lot of people, the race is an issue in the real world. They don't need to deal with it.
Now I'm thinking about. Sorry.
That's okay.
Now I'm thinking about a big bad whose motivation is to make the world or the plane or whatever more inclusive and homogenous, but that's going about it in a very bad way.
But so there's only 1% of other races, so we'll just get rid of 99% of humans.
Yeah, then everybody will be.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I was like,
wow,
that's perfect.
Sorry, spoilers.
You don't know what that is.
I saw a suggestion for how to resolve the popular generalizations that happen with races getting bad raps. Basically, confronting them and upturning them, describing them as being miscommunications. The example I saw was you have a bunch of orcs or a bunch of half orcs or something, and the world at large sees half orcs as these sort of very violent tribes of people, but then the party manages to find a way to sort of get deeper into orc territory, and as they get deeper, everyone's fine. They're just totally normal. It's not that the orcs were terrible. It's that the dick orcs got shoved to the edge of the territory and nobody wanted to deal with them. So everyone else is like, oh yeah, we're sorry that you had to deal with these assholes. Like, we're not shitty, but we just didn't want to deal with these toxic people that were hanging out in our town. So
new NPC monster idea, dick orcs.
Or dorks, as you
Dorks.
No.
But so as an example of and I also saw somebody on Twitter that said that they really wanted to, it was on, as it always is, discourse about the drow, and this person suggested, when I run drow from now on, they're just going to be completely normal society that happens to be matriarchal, and they get this horrible generalization made about them because they're a bunch of dark-skinned people in the world that happen to have a matriarchy. And as this person said,
worship
there's
a
nothing,
giant spider demoness.
well, there's nothing scarier to like racist assholes than a society run by black women. So they made these bullshit stories about us and we're totally normal. Or there's nothing wrong with us. There's nothing evil. Like, fuck off.
Now I'm thinking about Lolth being played like Oprah.
I did just come up with the other day while walking my dog.
You get an egg sack, and you get an egg sack.
Gross. But I literally, while I was walking my dog the other day, came up with a monologue for a character who worships a Lolth-like creature, a Lolth-like god, just talking about how spiders get a bad rap, and this is what spiders do for the world, and this is what our goddess does. Do not be afraid. Don't get on her bad side, but respect her, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I was like, I'm so fucking excited to have this speech in something.
It's probably the same talk I have to give my wife every time she sees a spider in the house. She's like, it has to die. I'm like, what?
Name the 5 other things. Yeah. I was going to say, name the 5 other things you'd have if you didn't have spiders.
Yeah.
She don't care.
They're scary.
Depends on the size. There's a certain size, about dime size. You can live if you're under a dime size. If you're over that, we're done. And if you are a freaking wolf spider in my garage, we are so done. I know you eat a lot of crap that I don't want in my garage, including all the other spiders. Sorry, bud. If I see you, no. I will tear that place apart to find you.
So preparation.
Yeah.
So preparation.
But we wander. That's what we do.
How many questions have we gotten?
Many of them.
How many?
We went through meeting our guest, no prep DMing. Okay. Oh no, we haven't talked about that one yet. Prepped as a DM, but the DM prep was like sort of a bunch of stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you want to talk about?
We've gone through 2.
But let's take a break. Let's go to Cash Corner for a second.
Cash Corner.
Yo,
we got 6 more to do.
Up in the Cash Corner.
Cash Corner.
We're still workshopping our melody.
We're workshopping that.
All right, so thank you all.
Nobody puts cash in the corner.
It's true. That's what was that a Tango quote?
I have no idea.
Nobody puts cash in the corner. Sorry. That was a Tango and Cash joke. I'm done now.
Yes.
I'm done now.
Did you not get that? Wow.
I'm sorry. The 80s was a very long.
It was. Let's not think about it. All right. So thank you guys for watching so far. We have a lot more to talk about, but we want to take a moment to thank and gush a little bit about our sponsors who we love and appreciate, and we always feel appreciated from them. So our sponsors, which one are you pointing at right now? Just in general, in the direction of it, or is there a particular one you want to start with?
It's right now. It's Nerdsmith. I was just pointing at the little thingy.
We are proud members of the Nerdsmith Network, and so is Chad. We are a community of creators.
Proud's a bit strong.
It's on the branding. You better be proud,
I know.
Chad.
I yes.
So we are a community of creators. We're podcasters, streamers, video content creators, musicians, role players, all sorts of stuff. And we make free content for you to enjoy. We just wrapped up our sub drive at the end of April, and we want to take a moment to thank anybody who decided to support one of our shows or the network at large. You help us make this stuff and continue making it, and we cannot express enough how grateful we are for you being a part of our community. If you are interested, since the subdrive is over, but if you're still interested in supporting us, you can find us on nerdsmith.org/support. And you can find out all the neat things that you can do to support us. And Chad, you can support Chad by choosing to support Chaotic Goodness or In Vain. Those are his 2 shows. And Logan and I, obviously, we have Discover RPG here. You can promote Shenanigans. There's a bunch of stuff. So you can go find any of the shows, and at many different levels, depending on what you're comfortable with. And we would love you dearly. More importantly, tell people about the show. Tell people about the network. even just a sentence on a tweet about what you like about something can change a person's mind or convince them to look at something. And so that is an incredibly powerful tool that you, a viewer, wield. So please use that power and use it liberally, though responsibly, but mostly liberally.
Use it for good or for awesome.
Yes. Our sub drive may be over, but we won't say no to more money.
Of course not.
My child eats a lot.
We're just not gonna.
Is that gonna be okay?
Push really hard for it,
Chad. If only I had known, Chad, that would have been the quote on the subdrive webpage. Just Chad looking really, really upset. My child eats a lot. There you go. So that is our network that we are incredibly proud to be a part of, but we are also incredibly proud to be sponsored by two very cool groups of people. We have Die Hard Dice, a really, really generous and talented group of people making polymer and metal dice in really kick-ass designs and colors. You can find them at dieharddice.com. You can also, as a gift from us, you can get 15% off your next or your first purchase from Die Hard Dice if you use the promo code DRPG. Using the promo code gets you that discount, but it also tells Die Hard that this is where you came from, so it helps us in our relationship with them. They know that we're preaching the gospel of Die Hard Dice effectively. So please do us a favor and save yourself some money on these incredible dice.
And if you were a part of the Champions of the Earth Kickstarter, I happen to know that they were one of the tiers was that you would get a Die Hard Dice, random D20 from Die Hard Dice. I happen to know it may not necessarily be random anymore, and so we have awesome things coming. Also, Die Hard Dice is the creators of three amazing products now that I had not seen before. Dire D20s, which are 35 millimeter D20s. They have the new metal meeples, which are colored meeples that are solid metal, just like their dice are, same materials, same colorways, which you can order now for all of your upgrading meeple needs.
Shit! Is that a dire?
Nice. And
are they both, or just one of them, so you can compare the two?
No, they're both. I got two Dire D20s. One's gunmetal gray, the other is burnished gold.
Nice.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, those are gigantic, and they will make your other dice look like pitiful little children.
Hold on, I got the comparison shot coming up.
Yeah, right?
And then, wow.
Holy shit.
Jesus. Okay, I hadn't seen them next week yet.
The only concern about the Dire D20 is that you should check out Die Hard's dice trays, because that shit will probably dent your
table. Dropped this on my foot, and it really fucking hurt.
And then the most recent product.
And there's our Die Hard ad. I dropped this on my foot.
Yes, perfect. And then their most recent product that'll be coming out very, very soon. It's a part of a big over at Geekly. If you are familiar with Geekly, they're doing a big fundraiser. They just finished a big fundraiser for the Trevor Project, which is one of our favorites. You might notice them down in our rotation. I don't know if that has that in there. I think it does. They gave them a bunch to be able to give away of their brand new Scroll of Rolling, which is a roll up dice rolling tray that stores your dice as well. It is a very cool product. It will be coming out next month, I believe.
They just tweeted out today about it, that it's going to be available on May 14th. So in a week.
A very cool thing. So if you're,
I just got paid today.
Yay!
If you're into, if you're an artist and you do pencil rolls or paintbrush rolls, it's like that, but for your dice, and it's a dice tray as well. It's an incredible, ingenious product because it'll fit places that normal bags and things just won't. It's just perfect.
And as someone married to a leather worker, there is just staring and drooling happening at these pictures. He wants to make one so bad, and he's just like, they did a really good job with this. I don't know how to make it.
They're really, really good. So anyway, that's Die Hard Dice.
And then our other beautiful, wonderful, nerdy-ass sponsor is World Anvil. World Anvil is a what do you call it? The most robust world building and campaign management software on the internet today. And you should ask Logan because he's tried them all. That is starting to just roll off my tongue pretty easy. I'm very impressed.
You get used to it after a while.
You should check them out at worldanvil.com. We run an account for Shenanigans and Countless Heroes. They're both set in the world of Vale. So you can find Vale's World Anvil page by going to nerdsmiths.org. Check out Shenanigans or Countless Heroes, and there's a link to our World Anvil. And
Chaotic Goodness and In Vain are both on World Anvil. We
awesome.
Don't really update it as much as we should. I'm still waiting on Kim to do some articles.
But they exist. Yeah. If you want to send me the links,
put a bunch of Wikipedia.
I was going to say, Chad, send me the links and I'll put them on our YouTube. The description for this video, they can go down and check it out. So yeah, you should check out our shows. We have been availing ourselves of not only the free available tools that are just from signing up for World Anvil. You get some incredibly robust world building options, but also the premier features that they offer to their guild members. You get a bunch of really powerful customization options. So if you check out Final Rights, which also has a World Anvil, I've been playing around with the style sheets on that and making it super pretty, and I'm very proud of it. And those are the kind of personalized experiences that you can build if you are a guild member for World Anvil. So highly recommend you go check them out. They have reasonable levels of guild membership, all the way up to big Mama Jahamba awesome levels that'll make you super impressive to everybody because they're just really beautiful.
Angela, repeat that.
Mama Jahamba.
They also,
did you not understand I meant impressive?
Yes.
I just came up with a new NPC name.
Mama Jahamba.
Mama Jahamba. They also, every month and actually every week, they're coming out with new features and updates. The guild itself, if you're a member of the guild, gets to vote on features. And if you're a member of their top tier guild, then I believe that smaller group even gets a feature every month. So I'm not sure if all that's still true with the way they've had to restructure. They have over 250,000 active users now. So I know that they are growing incredibly because I think only 2 months ago they only had 200,000. So they are over 250,000 now. So they are growing really, really incredible. If you have not heard of World Anvil or used World Anvil, but you used to use Obsidian Portal, which is what I used to use, you will be incredibly impressed with World Anvil and its functionality. It is basically like, it's not like anything. I would say it's like Obsidian Portal, but it has all the features of Obsidian Portal and then 1,000 times more. So it is very incredible. You can try it for free, or you can sign up to be a guild member and get all the extra amazing features on top of that.
And not just getting a cool suite of world building tools, but you're also becoming a member of a really welcoming and knowledgeable community of people who will help you out and bounce ideas off of and go to events and stuff with. You should absolutely check out World Anvil and their amazing community.
And I understand they may be at WonderCon next year.
It's possible.
They're also going to, I think, Gen Con this year?
Possibly, yes.
Is that where Gen is going? Yeah.
I believe Gen is going to Gen Con.
Yeah. So, yeah. Exciting.
And that was our Cash Corner, where we talk and where we wax poetic about the people that, ching ching. Anyway, doodle-doo. Welcome back to Discover RPG, Internet, where we go back to our topic. Your cash gun is locked away. Your cash gun is safely locked away in your cash gun vault, where it's supposed to be, separate from the ammunition.
Yeah, I really don't know where it is. Oh, well.
Yeah, I heard about that story.
Just waiting for Kenny. What do you have? Oh, cash gun! No! Okay, so back to our topics at hand. We can always circle back if somebody comes up with an idea, but I did have a topic that is tangentially related to prepping as a DM. When you prep, what kind of tools do you tend to use? Whether that's software or websites, or what do you use besides World Anvil?
I think the most obvious one, Google Docs.
Google Docs, yep, because you
Google
share.
Docs is a huge one for me. It's most of what I use, most what a lot of people use that I'm aware of.
Old school. Good job, Chad. Do you have like a bullet journal style or something that you use to organize it? Or do you just write in it?
Oh, nice.
That's fun.
So I have, this is...
It's all white, but I believe you that there's writing on it. Cool. Okay, there you go. All right. I see the writing now.
This is called White Pages by White Lines Paper. White Lines by... company's called White Lines. Anyway, it's designed so that you can take a photo of the page and then it digitizes it for you.
Yeah. Evernote has the same thing. Like you can actually buy Evernote notebooks, and if you take a picture of it and you have the app on your phone, it'll automatically upload it there. I did that for a Shadowrun campaign. Honestly, what I use, like you saw the notebook, I do most of it in that, like to keep it all in one spot. But if I am at work or out somewhere in public, I use Google Keep, Google Notes. I write a lot of notes to myself, recording if I need to. Depends on the game. Chaotic Goodness did none of that.
Yeah, I have a recording app on my phone that I record notes on. Though I'm thinking I'm going to start skipping that step because I have to transcribe that then. Because I just discovered how awesome Google Docs voice to text is. It's very effective, and I use it now. That I can just brainstorm on the document itself, and it's very good at doing that.
Can you use it on mobile?
Not on mobile, but you can. But it's very good on the desktop version.
Okay, I'll take a look at that.
You use technology to solve a problem.
Maybe technology is not the devil after all.
Oh no, it is.
But the devil can be helpful sometimes.
Technology's the devil.
I also, Andy, my husband, also uses OneNote. I converted him to OneNote because there is a level of organization that OneNote can achieve that I've yet to see in a lot of other just like word processor versions of note keeping. Because it's, you have a notebook with a topic, then you can make subheadings and then subheadings in that and then subheadings in that. Like you can really break down your notebook really effectively with that, and you can do internal links. So I have a copy of the SRD that has been entirely converted into OneNote, and you can search in it, and it has clickable stuff, and it's really, really cool. Downside is you got to have Office to be able to do it, so not everybody has that, and so it's, you know, it's a little limited, but that's a really good one.
I'm going to make a confession right now.
Do it.
So we have a joke on this network how some people are dice dragons, like dice hoarders. I'm a notebook hoarder. Like I see cool notebooks. I get it. I have tons of blank notebooks I haven't used. I haven't even like, oh, well, hold on.
I don't
literally just bought these.
I don't know what you're talking about.
These are actually going to be a big Easy Con. I bought these for Tessa and Heather and I. They have cute little animals on them and say things like "be kind" or "be clever" or "be brave." They're very cute, and I'm sharing them when we
actually. Angela, you might like this. Yes. So on Kickstarter, there's a company. What's the name? I think it's Game Tea or something like that. They're an English company. What they do is they made big leather-bound journals for dungeon masters to use, and they started a new Kickstarter with wallet-sized notebooks, pens, tiny dice that you can pull out, and all of your Dungeons and Dragons prep is right there in your pocket. GameT.uk. That's it. Thank you, Dire Bear. There's an awesome company. Hold on, I have one of their notebooks. Hold on.
Awesome.
How do you post a link? Sorry, that's just not supposed to be able to happen. That's fine. Not a big deal. Yeah. We don't mind. It's not actual
I saw the little
links
bag
that we're trying to block, but that was just very weird. Yeah. Nice.
Very pretty. I was going to say that I see hex journals in here as well, so you could... I saw the beads! Yeah, they have solid... Look, they have solid dice. Brass D20 draw cord beads. They're just metal dice that you put on the ends of your drawstring.
Nice. Oh, very nice.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I wish I actually have committed to trying to digitize a bit more. because I have so many notebooks that I'm never going to use. So I'm saying, no, I have to write all my stuff in this notebook so that I can get rid of it. Puppy, hello.
Yeah, so notebooks, obviously, I mean, I have, well, not right now.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
I've stolen them, but yes.
Sorry. I thought I lost this. This is my notebook for In Vain. I finally found it.
Yay. So notebooks is definitely an absolute big one. Next, I would say that a little bit of my prep for some games is done in Roll20, since we use Roll20 for a lot of things. So usually the prep in Roll20 would involve just getting scenes set up, getting possible scenes set up and put in there, and having good art for it. I use actually it's only like 2 people's art really for almost everything in there, other than what comes with Roll20 itself. Let me get those names so I can put them out there, because it's some of the best art I've seen on there, and they constantly are adding new stuff. Let's see here. It's gonna take a second.
That's okay. Let me see. What other tools do I use? I mean, when I was running things non-digitally, I worked for a company that laminated things, and they had a ton of scraps that they were just going to throw out. And they were big enough to... Hold on a sec. My dog got stuck. Let me help him out.
Oh, that's how Dallas was going to die.
Oh, nice.
Oh my god. But so I worked for a company that did lamination, like poster lamination and stuff, and they just have all these scraps, and so I took them all. They were going to throw them out, and so now I have so much plastic laminating material that is already fully sealed that I can use for map making with wet erase markers. So I can just layer things on top and have a bunch of different shapes and stuff. I'm very, very pleased with how much of this stuff I have. I have like an umbrella basket that is just full of rolled up maps and things. That was something that I used when I was in terms of physical media. While Logan is searching,
I'm getting it.
Okay, because go ahead.
What were we gonna say?
Tic-Tac-Doe literally just covered a question I was about to bring up. Preparation as a player. So we talk about DM prep, and I have the personal opinion, and I've never always put this in practice, but as a player, I think the ideal situation is your character, the things about your character, as well as you would hope someone would know it DMing for you. You can't expect the DM to know everything about your character, but you need to be the expert on your class, on your character's abilities and equipment. That might require a little bit of study if you've never played the class before. That might require you talking to your DM and asking them before session, how does some of this stuff work? Can you talk me through this? But it is very important that you back up your DM with the understanding of how your stuff works. While at the same time, not expecting that your knowledge gets to supersede the DM fiat. Like, the DM might decide they don't like the way something works and might say, hey, in this situation, this is how it ends up. And fighting in a rules lawyery kind of way because you know what the book says is counterproductive to just the yes and nature. If you think you have a problem with something your DM does, bring it up with them after. Like, let it lie, and then talk to them later about a concern you have. Don't start a flame war in the middle of the game because you think you know a rule better than them. But that being said, know your shit about your character. That is a huge deal.
It really is, because the DM is not going to be able to know everything. I got the 2 names. So Gabriel Pickard does all the map stuff, and we've received permission from him to use this commercially. He says anybody can have that. It's just we went try to get all the artists and go through for them. So that is all of the backgrounds. That's all of the maps themselves. And then for the monsters, most of the time it is David North that we're using. So those 2 are the big ones. I thought they looked the most cinematic. They looked the the best. Although I'm finding more and more, as much as I love David North's high quality tokens, for viewing, especially since it's a little bit smaller of a map than the full screen, I find, and the audience can't really zoom in, and often players are off in every corner of the map. I find that round tokens with just the face of the monster and a white background helps for visibility, especially on smaller monsters. So I'm starting to go more towards that for a lot of my prep. But yeah, so those are the two that I use along with Roll20 to do a lot of the prep for the scenes and things there. So that's another tool that I've used.
Yeah, it's really neat. We had a...
Oh, and the biggest tool I use for prep is probably fantasy name generators.
Yup.
FantasyNameGenerator.com.
Literally that website.
Just Google fantasy name generator. They literally have every generator you could ever think of. Like I Google, like nobody's going to have, this random thing. They had it. I don't remember what it was, but I was like so obscure, and they had a name generator for it. I was like, that's ridiculous. So
my big tool has always been Google Translate. But then I discovered, again, cool thing that Google Docs can do in the spreadsheet. I'll find it. I'll put it in the link for the this episode. The Google spreadsheets lets you put in code to translate automatically into a language. And so if you create an entire a series of columns with different languages that you like to reference, and then you put something in English in the first column, it will automatically translate across the entire document.
Neat.
So you can just say, okay, what is fire in 15 different languages? And you can see and maybe pull from that for inspiration for names.
There's a website that does that as well. I didn't know that did it. So you can do larger amounts of text that way. That's cool. Because this website, you can only look up a single word at a time. So, but it doesn't.
Yeah, this is just whatever's in the cell gets
that
translated.
Is very neat.
Andy has it all planned out for his naming.
And if you're looking for name generators that have nothing to do with fantasy or Dungeons and Dragons or magical type stuff, there's actually, it's called the Shadowrun name generator, where you can get names of bands, taverns, restaurants, Shadowrunners, or you can use it for other things, but more of a contemporary, modern, or futuristic type one. It is a double-edged sword, because at one point in a Shadowrun game, they did end up going to a restaurant that was called Nancy's Greasy Crepe Hole.
Nice. Just to be clear, fantasy name generators also does not just fantasy stuff. They have sci-fi. They have World of Warcraft name generators. They have all sorts of things. They have hundreds of name generators, seriously. But that's another one. I want that one too for when I run sci-fi games. That sounds really cool. So when talking about prepping, we have another question from the audience. How much do you create on your own for an adventure versus how much do you borrow from like a module? What percentage do you like to have? This is a new DM. They're finding it hard to create even though they want to.
So my quick suggestion, if you're just starting out and you're new and you're looking for ideas, there's nothing wrong with getting like a module, or like on free RPG Day is coming up, so you can get like one-shot modules for free. Read through it, look at the mechanics. You can either use it whole cloth the way it is, or you can take the parts that you like and tweak it into a story that you come up yourself. I mean, that's kind of how I got started, because it's like, how do I play this game? How do I use this system? I was looking at modules and one-shots, and once I got the hang of it, you can kind of finesse it a little. The whole point is you need to know the rules before you know how to bend them.
Yeah. Just the other day, we were talking about this, and we were talking about in-game. Somebody was asking me about a particular thing that I did in one of my games, and I said, "Oh, I took that from Angel," and they're like, "What?" I said, "Oh, it was this thing in Angel. I ripped it right off." It's exactly what's happening is what happened this particular episode of Angel. I love the story so much, I'm using it. There's nothing new. And then I turn around and tell them, oh, by the way, this other character who's two gods stuck in the same body, yeah, that was from Buffy. So, I take what I'm going to, you can use a lot from a lot of different places.
When you steal ideas from one person, it's called plagiarism. When you steal ideas from multiple people, it's called research.
Yes.
Parks and Rec. I use a lot of Parks and Rec material. I also use a lot of How I Met Your Mother.
Is there a little Sebastian in Cinderhaven that I'm not aware of?
Is that where the meat tornado?
Yes. But even
why didn't we get to play Cones of Dunshire, Logan?
all about the cones. I borrow a lot of things from a lot of different places. I was asked the other day a question about where I come up with well, it was more about how my emotional torture of my player characters, but where I come up with that, and I really didn't know. The best answer I can come up with is all over the place. I mean, I kind of draw from a lot of different places. As I said earlier, I don't know if you were here, but I said that I prescribe to the Joss Whedon rule of storytelling, which is nobody can be too happy for too long. When it comes to preparation and borrowing for these places, it's when you get into gaming and you get more into DMing, you get to a level of confidence where you just kind of understand what works and what doesn't. It just takes practice, and you'll get to a point where the other day, I think Matthew made a comment about it in game when we were doing Countless Heroes. The players have this bag; they pull a random item from every day, and it's just a cool magic item. And they pulled a mirror out of it. And I didn't have a real solid plot line for the last arc of my campaign. And this mirror presented an incredible opportunity. So I started to play around with the idea. What could I do with it? And we basically I'd already set up this idea of there being other universes. We created a mirror universe. A couple of characters got stuck in it in the first game. All improv. I had none of it prepared. And I borrowed heavily from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Initially the idea of the mirror universe. And then I thought of, this is the crappy universe. Everything's gone wrong here. The city is in constant strain and pressure. Maybe the other place is the happy place. Maybe people are actually happy with the way things went over there. Maybe one big event didn't happen. How would that have changed everything? And I went back to the beginning of the campaign and thought, okay, here's my event. Now there's always some minor things throughout, and it runs through a few plot holes, but it's a different universe. You never know exactly what's changed or how. And that is now the arc of this entire, or the plot for this entire arc, the last arc. And
we're the dark timeline.
But it's perfect because and the idea that you guys might have the opportunity to fix it. And we, it actually, by doing this, I started to see the pieces fall together of everything else I had set up in all of these other areas and kind of pulled together. I was in a multi-level cult for a while, and one of the things they taught you was, it said they're actually, I learned quite a lot from them. It wasn't how to make money, but I learned quite a lot. One of the things they teach you is they say make a mess and clean it up later. So it's like do a lot of work, and I took that in DMing as I throw a lot of stuff out there, and then when the players pick up the things they want to do, I then start to make connections between them. That way, they very often go, wow, did you have this planned the whole time? And of course they say yes, but I didn't. I didn't have any of it planned the whole time. But the idea is that you can then start to introduce little tiny things that make these connections that look like you've had it planned the entire time. So that is a lot of how I do my gaming.
The more I hear you talk about DMing, Logan, the more I'm getting the idea of this parallel where becoming a successful dungeon master is a lot like being a parent. It's you come across as confident, but inside you have no idea what the fuck you're doing. You're just making it up on the fly.
It's all illusion.
It's illusion.
It really is.
You're a magician. You're taking concepts, you're taking little misdirections and making it look like you planned it the entire time.
And you also say in both roles in your life, you still say because.
I think the stronger DM or parent doesn't say that, but all right. I very
you
much.
Say, how do you yes and a kid, really?
It's like
okay,
I want to eat candy for dinner. It's like okay, and you also have to eat something healthy to balance.
Nope, me too. Let's do it, kid. We'll go get some Kit Kats right now. We'll eat fucking 50 Kit Kats for lunch, and they'll get sick. There you go. Then they don't want to do it anymore. No, I was completely and 100% hashtag blessed that I have a kid that does not do crazy things like that. They are very mellow and very responsible, and they are in some ways more responsible than me. Don't ever tell them I said that. All right.
What the hell is that like?
Put it on the internet. They're gonna find it.
Nah, they don't watch any of my shows. They have better things to be doing. So in general, that's just it. That's what I do. I don't do a lot of prep. What I do is reactionary. I react a lot to what the players are doing. The some of the hardest sessions for me are the earlier sessions. The first session of a campaign is the worst session for me because I got nothing. I have nothing to work on. I have nothing to do with. I have to come up with something, put it out there, and hope the players grab onto it. If they don't, I have to find something within that frame that they did. I usually try to start with some unique thing. I might have an idea of where I want things to go initially, or have a couple of different clues. We were very lucky in this campaign, the Countless Heroes, that we did a bunch of prequel campaigns. So I knew a lot about the world beforehand. I knew what the history of the city was. And I used some of that, but even then it's still changed. It's changed quite dramatically. And there's a lot of things that are the same. And it is just so much fun to be more reactionary. The players have a lot more say in what's going on, and they feel like everything they do matters because it literally does. Everything they do is the story, and that works out really well.
I have a question for you, Logan. So when you say as a reactionary dungeon master, so as an example, do you mean as in the players go to a location you weren't expecting them to go, and so you create everything right off the bat? Or do you, like they say, I want to go do this thing. It's like, okay, so you describe the place, describe what it's like, describe how you feel when you get there as an example. Like, do you create the side path, or do you invite the player to create some of that with you?
So I listened to an amazing podcast called the Chaotic Goodness Podcast, and it was my first introduction into that style of DMing. This idea of
I heard the Game Master is a very sexy guy. I've heard that.
He's a very sexy guy. So that was my first real successful look at having the players create a scene. I had seen it kind of done here and there. I was a little sheltered as a DM and as a player. You might be surprised. Even though I owned a game store for a very long time, a couple of years, a very long time ago is what I meant to say. That was the first time I ever looked at it, maybe with an open mind, and went, wow, that's a neat idea. I'm going to start doing that more. So I try to do that sometimes. Last night in Shenanigans, I did it a lot. Countless Heroes, I try to do it here and there, because a lot of times what would happen in those situations is they would do this. They would go to talk to somebody I don't know or I haven't built. And I would sit there and go, okay, hold on. And then we would pause for 5 or 10 minutes while I figure it out. Now I have that tool to be able to go, what do they look like? And then they're on the spot. What's their race? What's their quirk? I always love that quirk, because that is where I'm going to win. That quirk, like, they have rainbow colored hair. Okay. So they have rainbow colored hair. The way they were described as dwarf and kind of like a little flamboyant. I immediately went to Tom Mulaney and his whole bit about wanting to get drugs for plane flights and things.
Oh, John Mulaney.
John Mulaney, and there was this nurse there. There was a very flamboyant nurse, and I just grabbed that voice. I'm like, I'm going to use that voice as this character, because it just kind of made these connections. I just grabbed things out in the world. Nobody, I don't think, would have made that connection otherwise unless I had said something. But that's another example of just kind of borrowing from something I've experienced. You just grab onto these voices that I can kind of sort of do. You make them your own.
You said John Mulaney, and I thought you were going to go, new in town. That was kind of the voice.
Not that one.
I was thinking he was going to start singing the Animaniacs theme song. John Mulaney, Animaniacs.
Nice.
Decades.
Here's something
decades ahead of his time.
So
or behind his time.
Yes. Here's like, if we're talking about improv, something that I kind of tried once as kind of like, well, let's kind of see what happens. Let's see where they take this. That actually became something pretty powerful, and it's something that I actually use in Chaotic Goodness now. Is they create the scene, they create the place that they're going, the space station or whatever that they're going to. Or, okay, so you're trying to do this. What complication do you run into? What makes this harder? And then I'm surprised with the crap they come up with. Like, we had a recent episode, I think it was about a couple of weeks ago. It just came out, so I can talk about it. It was, they go to this planet to deliver this bag that they found. It is important to the plot. It's like, okay, so you get to the planet. What's going to make delivering this package harder than you expected. It's like, oh, it's a forbidden planet. The species is an isolationist culture, and they have an automated missile defense system that will fire at anybody that comes into their planetary space. And I was like, that was totally not what I was expecting.
It's nice.
So it's like, okay, you get thermonuclear warheads shot at you. Have fun with that. You just kind of, it's like, choose your destroyer.
That's amazing. So I love this idea so much, and we're looking for ways to engage the audience. We decided to take that concept to a whole nother level, and we invited the audience to be able to pay to introduce an NPC into our game. Because I like a challenge, evidently. It has so far, it's happened twice, and they were both incredible. Especially the one Matthew did, Brindlehose, the unicorn. It's a goofy enough game that it doesn't really matter what happens. It does. I mean, it all matters. And I was able to weave it in. And also the idea that somebody just paid a not insignificant amount of money to introduce this character, you have to give it a moment. You have to create with it. You can't just be like, yo, there's Jerry, whatever. Okay, he's up there doing the comedy on stage and all this.
You gotta let him get
stuff.
Shot off of a train.
You know, yeah. Well, you can do that after. That was the second scene, so he got two scenes for the price of one. But yeah, no, that's the type of thing. It's all of a sudden you got to think like this has to be significant. Something has to come from this. It needs to affect the game in some way. So I wanted to before we wrap up here, I wanted to get to Matthew's last question here. In preparing combat encounters, how do you balance difficulty? Do you use resources like Kobold Fight Club, great resource, to calculate encounter strength? Do you throw out what you think is cool and fudge it behind the scenes to let the players win? Our players don't listen to any of this.
You're gonna laugh at my answers.
I doubt it. Go ahead.
So, well, let's start at the expected answer and then kind of move down. So for in vain, the thing about
painstaking amount of work goes into balancing every combat perfectly and making sure that the hit points are exactly right and that every power is balanced against the player.
That CR has to be absolutely balanced.
100%.
Perfectly balanced, like everything.
Perfectly balanced.
So
like a fine sword.
So for in vain, in Vampire the Masquerade, actually, it's literally part of the rule books that says if you're a vampire and you're fighting a mortal, you're going to win. I mean, mortals are fragile; you can break them easily. So I don't really have to fudge too much. I'm like, you are going to win. It's just how much damage you're going to take in the process.
How does it look? Yeah,
it's just it's more of a story driven thing. When I have done Dungeons and Dragons, the Kobold Fight Club thing was a godsend for me, but players would steamroll everything that I would come up with, so I got kind of frustrated with that. So what I do now, and I hope none of my players are listening to this, but what I do now with some of my other games or podcasts is it's okay, so roll to hit this person, and they roll really, really high. It's like, okay, that hits. They roll kind of low. It's okay, that misses. And it's like they do this much damage. It's like, well, according to this sheet, it would have killed them. So they have more hit points all of a sudden. And they don't know. I'm just like, whatever makes the story more interesting. Like if this is supposed to be...
You're using those guidelines of hit points and stuff to assist in crafting an exciting story moment, even if it doesn't 100% align with what the rules say it should be the result.
Right. The best thing to do for your players... I'm sorry. The best thing to do for your players is to give them the illusion of hope. If you... it's true. If you're like, if they can fight this monster and they can hurt it, fine. If they end up having to run away and all, that's fine, as long as... Because as somebody who also plays some of these games, if you come across a monster and the dungeon master says, oh, your weapons do nothing to it, you can't hurt it, this thing is invincible, that's not fun.
So the question is, before you do that, do you at least look for something around the right CR? Do are you trying to balance it out, or do you just kind of find something that's kind of a cool thing or that fits the narrative better?
This is why I don't run Dungeons and Dragons anymore, because I got really frustrated with the Monstrous Manual and how unbalanced everything was. So in my other games, I just make shit up as I go.
And I'm gonna kind of say that as well. And this is where I really want to go and watch some of the creators of the game play more. I haven't really had a chance to, because I would like to see how they deal with this, because you could take a stock character at 12th level, you take 4 of them, and then you put them up against a CR12 creature. Within 1 round, that creature is dead. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter usually how the environment's working. In 90% of cases, that creature is dead fairly quickly. Even if you max hit points, it can maybe take a round and a half. It just seems like there's some issues there. That's where I turn to outside sources that I think have the balance, the realism, math-wise, if everything being equal, maybe those numbers work out. But in reality, it seems to skew a little bit more towards the players, which it should for the most part. Also, the idea that you're going to have 2 to 5 or 3 to 5 or 3 to 7 encounters a day in game, that's very unrealistic, I find, too. So the amount of resources that gets used up in those smaller combats doesn't really make sense to me either. So a lot of those numbers that got a little skewed. So I go to places like Kobold Press. Kobold Press, I think, has a little bit better pulse on what makes a challenging creature at the right CR. And I'll absolutely, I look at the CR initially. I look for something within usually that CR or 2 up to kind of give me a good monster range. And I try to find something that fits the narrative. If that doesn't work, I just find something that I like the powers of, and then I'll just reflavor it to be something different. This keeps the players guessing a lot. In the moment, in the actual game, I absolutely do not, most of the time, let my players, quote unquote, win. I am not thinking that, there's occasional, if the combat isn't serious, if there's not a plot related combat reason around it, sure. Yeah. The players are going to get through this. Those are the ones I let go to moments very quickly. We've talked about the moment system and just kind of skipping some combat, we got through a round of combat. You got some of your powers out. Now let's just get this combat over so we can get on with the rest of it. Because this combat was kind of random. It doesn't really matter. It's extra. And this is just your moment to be a badass. And I've done that with boss combat. In a previous game, there was an encounter where this politician pissed off to no end, threatened the paladin and the whole entire party, and the party went, we're taking that guy down. They literally called in, it was a big fight, it was one of the biggest, but they literally called in all of their favors with everyone across town, and they swarmed this place. But I'm looking at it going, there's no way they're not winning. They had a freaking dragon on their side. There's no way they're not winning. So let's just go into moments. Why? Let's not take 10 hours with this combat. It would literally be 3 sessions of combat. Let's go into moments. Let's talk about the moments that are happening and things like that. So that's a combat. Even though it was a big combat, I knew they were going to win. And we still talk about those moments till this day, even though we didn't roll dice for them. We just described the badass moment that they did in that situation. That is what players are really looking for. When they're rolling dice, they're looking for those moments. They're looking to have. I think he's covering his camera.
Back up a little, I
think he's covering his camera.
Okay, that's
They're
fine.
looking to have those moments and to come across. Now, when it comes down to actual combat, Mr. Blanks, thanks for stopping by.
Hey.
The Grim Gesture is absolutely my favorite. Yes, absolutely.
Fuck that guy.
The Grim Gesture has the ability to pull cards from the deck of many things and throw them at people to make them draw it. It's amazing. But in the moment, Matthew, yes, I pretty much make everything up. It is all hit points. I do calculate the hit points. I kind of keep track of them. I watch for the maximum on those monsters. But I've kind of decided at a certain point that the combat has gone on long enough. And after a round or two, I go, okay, we're at the point now where I'm going to set my arbitrary hit points now based on where I'm at, based on what the players are doing. Okay, it's got 50 more hit points, and that's where I'm going to draw the line. Usually I've made that decision about the time that I talk about it being bloodied or weary. That's when I've decided where the hit points actually are. The combat's gone on long enough that I've gone, this has been a good story moment. They're winning. They're going to probably beat this combat. Or the opposite happens is I go, this is a good story moment. They're losing, and I want to make this extremely dramatic because they're obviously struggling, and I want to make sure that this is a hard fight because it's going to become an important fight to them in the long run. If I said, even though it's like, oh, it's actually technically only 2 hit points away from death, I might decide, no, he's weary just now because I want to make sure that this combat becomes a struggle at that point. And I have killed people in those moments. One of those big moments was in Countless Heroes, if you've been watching, is the cave dragon that they fought inside the crack that Callie got stuck to the head of, which was a huge mistake on my part. I wish that I had not killed Callie in that moment. That was one of those times that I went through and looked back and went, that was a big mistake as a DM. The story up to that point had been so good, and the fact that she was resurrected into a dragon after choosing the dragon mother, or to a dragonborn after choosing the dragon mother as their god, it was such a beautiful story moment. And then literally a couple of days later, she dies again and has to get reincarnated again. It was ridiculous. It really sucked. I hated it. I was so mad at myself for weeks. I wish I hadn't done it, but in the moment, it's hard to really see that. It's hard to see the bigger picture, especially when you're doing 5 nights a week like we were, are. But for the most part, yeah, it's all just kind of made up. If I stuck to just the monster manuals, the combat would win. The players would win every single time. There's no way. Even using environment a lot of times, that maybe a dragon, I'm much smarter playing dragons and beholders now that I've read more about them, especially with Volo's guide, I think it was, about that. There's so much more to learn about them. But other than that, non-intelligent creatures, the ones that are just going to stand there and beat face, trolls, giants, it's a wipe. You can't do enough damage even without a healer in the party, because every player can heal now, it seems. You can't do enough damage to really make it worthwhile. And if they drop, they get right back up. And that's why a lot of times I want to start talking about maybe introducing some other penalty for dropping to 0 during combat. Maybe something that only lasts for the rest of the combat, but still. But yeah, so that's what I do. For the most part, it is absolutely just kind of made up as we go.
I have a bit of a more radical kind of idea, and this may not work entirely for Dungeons and Dragons. Like I said, I mean, that's kind of why I kind of got away from it. I want to get away from systems that are more with the dice rolling, and I like more of the narrative type stuff now. So my thinking is, if it is something that you want the players to succeed at, don't let them roll. They just succeed. If you want them to succeed, they succeed. If you want them to have a challenge, or if the outcome is unknown, then let them roll the dice. Like, for example, if they have to break in, they have to get something from a building, and they have multiple ways of doing it. They can seduce somebody, they can break in, whatever. However they want to do that, that's fine. If they fail one way, they have to do another, whatever. Combat's the same way. If I'm going to put them up against little minions and stuff, it's like, I just kind of want them to blow through them just to kind of let them feel powerful. Describe to me how you completely wipe the floor with these people. Yeah. If I want them to sweat, if I want to give them a big challenge, then comes the big bad or the big monster, and that, because I just think it's more of a narrative thing. If it's do things that are important to the story, is kind of like the way I'm thinking, is if because we've all heard those stories, we all joke about those game masters that make you roll to use the bathroom. If it's something that your character can do, let them do it. If it's not, if it's not interesting to the story to have them fail at something, just let them do it. Just let them do it for the sake of the story.
I was going to say, at the same time, there's this idea of, like, for me, I love the idea of passive checks. So I look at that a lot. Like, we have a player with a persuasion of plus 17. You got a passive persuasion of 27. You're not rolling for much in my world. You pretty much get what you want as you go. The problem is that player went, why don't I ever get to roll my persuasion? It's my best stat. Well, see, you succeed. And that was my fault. I didn't communicate that to them. And that's what I was going to say there, is communicate that to them and do it in the moment. Say,
you're so good at it, you do it flawlessly. It's not even a challenge for you.
Well, and that's the important thing. The speech-based skills might be a little harder to interpret this as, but, like, say someone's really good at tracking. Like, you have the ranger who has a gigantic survival skill. Don't just say, yeah, well, you do it. let them have that as like a little moment, a little hero moment of describing how fucking good they are at that. Yeah. It's a little harder to do if you want your characters to be speaking as part of that persuasion skill. Yeah. But you can still do things to express why that is so effective, or why in general you are just that effective of a speaker. But yeah, making it feel like a hero moment and not just a, yeah, you do that. That's the trick of overcoming that. Why can't I roll it? Or why didn't you let me roll it?
Thank you, Dead Aussie Raiders, for coming in. Dead Aussie Gamers for coming in. We really appreciate that. You guys are catching us right towards the end here as we're wrapping up.
We can do our review
talk.
We can do a review.
We can do a quick review. We're a little over already, but yeah, let's do a quick review. What did we talk about?
So, our guest today was the delightful Chad. Chad is the DM of Chaotic Goodness and In Vain, Valpurgis Nacht on the Nerdsmith Network. Those are a What's Old is New system sci-fi game for Chaotic Goodness, and In Vain is a Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition game set in 1989 Germany.
West Germany,
born and raised.
Oh no, I gotta sing the whole.
Yep. See, now there needs to be a theme song for In Vain that is just the Fresh Prince thing. Fresh Prince. I want to hear somebody talking.
9.
Please, as bonus content, will you please do that as bonus content? Sorry. Anyway, today we talked about preparation, the pros and cons of preparation, the idea of sometimes entering in as a DM or a GM where you think you have to have every single thing prepped, every single thing planned out, concrete. It's basically a novel outline, and how quickly that planning might crumble given the randomness of player interactions and player decision making. So the idea of perhaps perhaps the most effective use of your time would be something between prep and not prep, depending on your style. The idea of leaving yourself breadcrumbs. Don't feel like you have to have every single thing prepped all at once, and don't necessarily feel like you need to just fly off the handle and be like, well, I'm just gonna wing it. I don't have any idea what I'm doing. It can help to have not the structure, but the pieces planned out. That you have scenes, you have encounter ideas, you have rumors, you have any sort of pieces that can be put together as a story, but have them all shuffled out and you pull them as you need them. So that idea of prepping the real content, but not necessarily prepping the order in which stuff happens or the manner in which information is given. You can mix up NPCs, who gives them what information and why. You can play with that, but you can have stuff prepped to pluck from when you need it. Did I?
COH was the module. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Brain is broken.
COH?
What was the vampire module? It wasn't COH. The big one that just happened. I'm so dead. Plot Hunter's first module with the network. What were they running?
Curse of Strahd.
Curse of Strahd.
COS.
Gotcha. Sorry. So Curse of Strahd evidently does that extremely well. They do a lot of. It doesn't matter where you go. I only ever ran the Death House, so I don't know. But the idea is that it doesn't really matter where you go. You can kind of get the information you need as you go, and you kind of go through the story. So evidently, it does it very well, I have heard.
Cool. So we talked about the idea of prepping within reason. We talked about the idea of some of the skills that you need if you're going to just completely improv or improv a lot of your stuff. The idea of employing your players to help you come up with things.
And something on that, I just remembered. So the reason why I like to do that so much is we talked before about, player motivation, what players want to do. And a lot of times in some games, you have players are like, oh man, I came up with this really awesome stuff in my character's backstory I'd like to see more of in the game. And it may be difficult as a dungeon master, as a newer dungeon master, try to figure out where the pieces fit. One thing to do is when you're improvising with your players, ask them. It's like, so you come across somebody in the tavern you were not expecting who's from your past. Who is it?
There you go. Yeah,
and then they can come up. It's like, oh, it's this person that my lost love or whatever, or my mortal enemy is there. So that their answer tells you what type of game they want to play.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love the idea of plucking ideas and not just taking ideas from the backstory, but asking them what they want to be engaging with right now.
Exactly.
Like Sam Smorkle.
Yeah, Sam Smorkle.
Yes, the Sam Smorkle example. So we talked about...
If they don't want to save the world and they'd rather just do a dating simulator, you need to know that.
Right, because it's not that you're not going to necessarily run that. You just need to know that's what they want. Or you just play every game like Logan and you know that's what's expected. A dating simulator element.
This is just a shipping vehicle. That's what this is.
It really is. So the other things we talked about...
Our review show literally has an hour talking about ships every single time.
It's the shipping corner.
Yeah. I'm sure a large part of our epilogue will be that. On the 25th of this month.
Who were the ships you wish had sailed? Who were the ships that never were?
Everybody gets to choose one ship.
We have chaotic goodness fans call it space shipping.
Hey, it's amazing.
I love it.
So the other things we talked about really quick, we talked about the idea of preparation as a player, that ideally for a DM, a player would understand their character inside and out. They need to be, at least at the table, they need to be the expert on their character. Make it as easy as possible for the DM to run the game for you. Learn the basic rules, learn the character, or at minimum, talk to your DM and ask for their expectations. Some DMs don't care. Some DMs are like, oh yeah, I have no problem talking you through how this game works. If you just want to run it, give me an idea of a character you want to play, and I will help you through it. Some DMs are like that. Not everybody is. But it's good to know what your expectations are from your DM. So ask them. Talk to them.
It's like, if I have to tell you what Magic Missile does one more time.
Get them a deck of spell cards. Get prep stuff. Get what you need to learn. There's print and play stuff too. You can do a lot of things.
Man, I remember back in the day you had to make your own prep stuff like the spell cards, and now Wizards of the Coast sells it. It's genius.
I understood how to do it. And then the other thing we talked about in a topical way, we talked about tools for keeping notes, tools for keeping track of things. We talked about paper journals. We talked about OneNote, Google Docs being a great way to share things, all sorts of stuff. We looked at Chad's journal hoard.
There's a lot more than this.
So we ran a little over. Happy to do so, though, to welcome our raiders from Dead Aussie Gamer. If any of you guys are still here, please consider following us here on Twitch. And you can check us out every Wednesday here at noon PST for Discover RPG. We do themes. If you want to ask us any questions or pitch a theme for an episode,
if anybody has a theme for next week's episode, throw them in there. We look for a broad category. We've done money, we've done taverns, we've done felt, and we've done this one, preparation.
Puppets. Felted friends.
Felted friends.
Yes,
1-800-GET-FELT.
That was not a broad category.
Oh no, Chad. So if you
have
please,
something, we would love to know what you want us to talk about.
You can reach out to us on Twitter at Discover RPG Show. If you ever need any of this contact information, though, and we threw a bunch out at you, please just check us out at
shipping is not a time.
Please just check us out at nerdsmith.org. All of the links and everything are there. You can find all of us and all of our shows there. So please check us out. And we are wrapping, I think.
Join us in Discord.
Yes, please.
I'm going to be in Discord after this. Talk to me.
Yes, come hang out with us.
Yeah, come. We'll hang out in Discord for a little bit after this. So if you go there, just when you get onto the first page there, you just enter the command !DRPG. That will unlock the server and unlock our particular thread, so you can come and chat with us about the show, and we talk about other adventures. That is a good one coming up soon. We probably should talk about some of the new stuff coming up with D&D Live, which means an entire ocean-based show could probably be a really good one, talking about sea creatures and sea races and travel and things. That would be a really good one. We could talk about Salt Marsh, and then Die Hard Dice. Go use a coupon code DRPG there for 50% off. Thank you to World Anvil again, all of that. And one last thing I wanted to say is we should touch on another time. preparation for gaming at a table with your friends. There's a lot of things we could have touched on there. I didn't think about having pencils and papers and extra dice and things. There's a lot of stuff we could touch on. Snacks.
Healthy snacks.
A whole other thing we could talk about. Maybe we'll talk about it over there after I break my microphone. All right, guys.
Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Chad, for joining us. It was awesome getting to talk shop with you. And as always,
I am glad that you got to talk to me.
It was a transcendent experience.
Transcendent. That was very good.
And everybody who's watching us at home or at work, we don't blame you. We are entertaining lunch fare. Please have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, and as always, do us a favor and be good to each other.
And come back and see us at 5 p.m. PST, 8 p.m. EST for Homebrew Studio with Matthew Siebert.
Where he'll make a licorice golem.
Ooh.
He'll make a licorice golem?
We hope he'll make a licorice
I hope so. Yes.
All right, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.